good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millsy, back with Hometown Commander, back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I brew my version 1.0 deck list of the commander in front of us on my quest to outbrew the Magic world. As always, the deck list is going to be down in the description for you below, as well as I would really appreciate if you could interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe, do all the good YouTube stuff. Check out the links in the description. I would greatly appreciate it. Today, starting off our first full week of brews for Bloomborough after doing the pre-cons last week, and I felt it only right to tackle a very popular commander that I've actually never brewed for the channel before. So I thought I'd give it a go, and I figured it was going to get reprinted in this set, and it did, and that's Chatterfang Squirrel General, a 3-mana 3/3 Squirrel Warrior with Forest Walk that says whenever one or more tokens would be created under your control, those tokens plus that many 1/1 green Squirrel creature tokens are created instead. And then for a black mana and sacrificing X squirrels, we can give a creature plus X minus X until end of turn. I think Chatterfang is interesting for really two reasons. One, the top ability doesn't specify that you need to make creature tokens, which allows for some of the combos we're going to talk about in the deck. And the second one is that his baked-in removal to it, as long as we're getting rid of squirrels. Now, the really fun and interesting part about Chatterfang when it comes to being an aristocrats deck, right, is that traditionally your sack outlets are not in the same body that some sort of token creation is on. What I think makes Chatterfang such a great commander and one of the best at what it does is because it gives you tokens and it allows you to immediately get rid of those tokens, sacrifice them, allowing them to die for the purposes of our aristocrat triggers, and removing things at the same time. So we're going to talk about how we're going to try to make tokens so that Chatterfang can give us those extra squirrels. We'll talk about all of our sack outlets, the things you expect to see. Remember that when we talk about our sack outlets, we still have Chatterfang there. Chatterfang is always going to be a sacrifice option for us. So the sacrifice outlets aren't really as important as the aristocrat payoffs are, and we're going to talk about those in a lot more detail. You're going to notice I'm going to cover more aristocrats payoffs than I am sack outlets because, again, I have the ability to get rid of squirrels on Chatterfang. I have removal baked in. You know, these aren't as important as those aristocrats and those tokens are. So let's jump into it. As far as making tokens go, there's a lot of ways that you can approach this. What I tried to do is pull in as much squirrel synergy as I can because, of course, Chatterfang can still sacrifice those squirrels. I like Compy Swarm. This is a card from the Jurassic World Universes Beyond set. It's at the beginning of your end step. If a creature died this turn, you create a tapped token that's a copy of Compy Swarm. The thing that I really like about Compy Swarm is it's going to look mediocre, I think, on first look, but when you remember that when you have multiple token copies of these, they're each just doubling. So these Compy Swarms are just going to be doubling as long as creatures are dying in our turn, and that's not going to be very difficult to do, especially, again, when we have a sack outlet staple to our commander. Deep Forest Hermit, when it comes in, makes 4 squirrels, buffs our squirrels, and then has Vanishing. It will leave eventually, but the really important thing here is you get 4 squirrels from the Hermit, and then if Chatterfang's out, you get 4 more squirrels. So it's well worth the 5 mana for what it's going to give us. Hazel the Root Bloom is the commander of the Precon this time around. It's not as much of a slam dunk as I think a lot of people will think it might be in a deck like this, but I think it accomplishes 2 really important things. One, it can tap for mana, which is important depending on what we have going on. But 2, at the end step, it can just give us tokens, and that, again, can create more tokens for us to be able to utilize for any of the things we need to do. And since both Chatterfang and a lot of our other sacrifice outlets are at instant speed, it means that we'll have another option to do things if need be. Well, things like Scoot Swarm are great, right? Because they're going to continue to make copies, make either the insects or copy of itself, since, again, we're getting squirrels every time. Tireless Provision, Urban Land comes in, making a food or a treasure. Again, important part is that Chatterfang doesn't care what token's created. It's going to make a squirrel no matter what. So we still need to focus on these making food, making tokens of any type effects, because they're still going to be beneficial. Chatterstorm can make us some squirrels or go big if we cast a bunch of spells before it. Pest Infestation is a card I love for these tokeny type decks because not only does it make tokens, which means it's going to make us squirrels, but it's actually going to destroy up to X target artifacts or enchantments, meaning we can get rid of some of our opponent's things as well. Yeah, it might often be too expensive for us in a more high-powered table, but I think as we hit this if we try to play this in a more mid-powered table, I think Pest Infestation can take out those mana rocks, take out those pesky things, and get us pests, which will also get us squirrels. Verdant Command almost all the time in this deck is just going to end up being 4 squirrels, 2 from the command and 2 from Chatterfang. Chitter Spitter works really well. Being our upkeep, we can sack a token. If we do, we put a counter on it. It's going to make a squirrel every turn. Again, with Chatterfang means 2 squirrels. And then it's just going to buff our entire board, giving us an option to just risk winning the game in combat if we have enough squirrels and enough buff on our squirrels. Black Market Connections can make a treasure every turn, which is very good. It can also make us a shapeshifter as well, which is a squirrel, and we lose 3 life. So there is a world where we do one or the other. But there is a world where we could do both, lose 4 life, make a treasure and a shapeshifter, get 2 squirrels out of it, and be up so many tokens if need be. At minimum, though, I think we're making a treasure, losing a life, getting a squirrel off it because of Chatterfang, and just being up on our position where we want to be. Squirrel Nest comes in enchanted to a land and just makes a squirrel when you tap it. Squirrel Sanctuary is kind of interesting. When it ETBs, we make a squirrel. And then whenever a non-token creature we control dies, we could pay 1. If we do, we return it to its hand to play it again to make another squirrel. Kind of an interesting card. We're not playing as many of the reassembling skeleton type aristocrat loops that I think would make Squirrel Sanctuary an even better card. The reason I'm not, in all reality, is because I try my best to make this as well-rounded as I can. We're going to talk about the cards that I think are going to satisfy what we need as far as comboing with Chatterfang. And at the end of the day, I wanted to still try to make it somewhere near a decent budget level, even though Reassembling Skeleton isn't that expensive of a card. We want to try to keep that squirrel theme where we could, which feels kind of like a moot point now that I think about it. But getting into our sack outlets, we had a great new one get printed in War and Soul Trader. The reason is because this literally just prints money with Chatterfang. So you pay a life, you sack a creature, and you make a treasure. Well, what Soul Trader is basically going to do is pay a life, sack a creature, make a treasure, and a squirrel with Chatterfang. Meaning, as long as we have enough life, I mean, we're now up a token every time we do this. And so that could be very good. This is also helpful if we make a creature token that is a squirrel. We can always turn that into a squirrel and get a treasure for it. I like Soul Trader a lot, and I think it fits in as a really good sacrifice outlet for the deck. Deadly Dispute and Plumb the Forbidden both do a very similar thing, where they both allow us to sacrifice a creature. In the case of Deadly Dispute, we can also sack an artifact and draw a card. Now, the cool part about Deadly Dispute is we can sack an artifact or creature, draw 2 cards, and make a treasure. With Chatterfang out, again, we're sacking a token, drawing 2 cards, making a treasure, and a squirrel, and we're going pretty far up. Plumb the Forbidden can turn a board of our tokens into card draw if we need it, and again, still have any of our aristocrat payoffs go off on the back end. Village Rites, very similar to Deadly Dispute, except we don't make the token. So that could still be useful if we need to just get rid of a pesky token to draw a couple cards to get into our good things. And then we have, the 2 namesake sacrifice outlets of what a lot of people think of when they think aristocrats, and Ashnod's Altar and Phyrexian Altar. Both of these carry a price tag, but they're both very good at what they do. Ashnod's Altar just allows us to sack a creature to add double colorless. Phyrexian Altar, sack a creature to add a mana. Both of these are going to pair really well with the creature we're going to talk about in 2 slides and Chatterfang, to just be a single step loop that we can do to just go as wide as we want, make as many tokens as we want, and if we have any of the aristocrat payoffs we'll talk about in a second, we'll just end the game as we go through that loop if nobody can stop it. But as far as those go, let's talk about them. We have things like Blood Artist. Whenever it or another creature dies, target player loses a life when we gain a life. Mirkwood Bats will have each opponent lose a life whenever we create or sacrifice a token. That is a key ability and one we really like, especially when we get into the loop we're specifically talking about. Nadier's Nightblade, whenever a token leaves our battlefield, each opponent loses a life when we gain a life. That one's not bad. The nice thing there is that it doesn't have to die. It just has to leave the battlefield. That could be important if somebody tries to rest in peace us or something like that to stop us from having our tokens hit the graveyard. So Nadier's Nightblade is a good option in that sense. But the card that I think everyone's going to talk about when we talk about Chatterfang, and the one we're going to immediately come to mind, is Pitiless Plunderer. Pitiless Plunderer is such a great combo with Chatterfang because it says whenever another creature we control dies, we create a treasure. What this effectively means is we sacrifice a token, make a treasure and a squirrel, and now we're up a treasure for the low price of just sacking probably another squirrel, let's be honest. This pairs really well with Chatterfang's second ability, because if we choose to get rid of a couple squirrels to knock off a creature, now we're just getting a bunch of treasures in the process. Now remember, this is every single creature dying is going to trigger this separately, meaning we get a treasure and a squirrel every time it goes off. And Pitiless Plunder is probably your biggest scary combo with Chatterfang. And all you need is one of these other aristocrat types effects, and you can do that loop as many times as you want, as long as there are creatures out. And you're going to probably push the table to extinction. Zulaport Cutthroat. Each opponent loses life and you gain a life whenever another creature dies. Agent of the Iron Throne, I really like. It's probably my favorite aristocrat payoffs because it says whenever an artifact or creature we control is put in the graveyard from the battlefield, each opponent loses a life. This means that when we sack treasures, everybody loses a life, and when we sack their creature tokens. I think that's one of those effects that could be really important. The only downside to Iron Throne is that our commander has to be out in order to use it. So that's the downside, but I think the upside is just way more raw damage. Bastion of Remembrance makes us a token when it comes in, but then whenever a creature we control dies, each opponent loses life and you gain a life. Kind of a great aristocrats payoff because it makes us a body when it comes in, and then it gives us that ability. Another way to potentially end the game with Pitiless Plunder and Chatterfang is Revel in Riches. The top ability says whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, we make a treasure. But the bottom ability says whenever beginning your upkeep, if you control 10 or more treasures, you win the game. What we can do with Chatterfang and Pitiless Plunder is just make a bunch of treasures before our turn and potentially win in our upkeep that way. Riches also just runs the risk of us winning with it outright if we can kill enough of our opponent's creatures. And then the Meat Hook itself, a great aristocrats payoff. It can come in and give a big -X debuff to the board, which can potentially get rid of a bunch of creatures. Whenever a creature we control dies, each opponent loses a life. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, we gain a life. Again, every time a creature we control dies, everybody's losing a life. We don't get that life gain off like some of the other aristocrats payoffs, but again, you're still getting that -1 tick through from our opponents. It's hard to really robust that out because I think the more experience you get with Aristocrats deck, the more you understand you're looking for generation plus outlet plus Aristocrats payoff. And as soon as you get those three, those wheels really start turning. And I took my own spin to the deck. You can see the deck list. But if I was going to take this to testing, I would start to look at some other options as far as how to make tokens or how to sacrifice tokens to make sure we just really fill out the curve and our stats with more of these to use. Bellatrix Withered Room got a reprint in the same precon that Chatterfang came in this time around, and I think it's a great outlet for making tokens because you make one every turn. I mean, you're going to be getting those pests every turn and potentially squirrels every turn. You can also pay 10 life to untap all lands you control, which could lead you to a big turn. Viscera Seer is a great sack outlet, sack a creature, scry one. It is probably one of the best free sack outlets we have, and believe me, there's plenty of other ones. I didn't add it in because I like the suite of the ones that I have, but if I went into testing and realized I didn't have enough, I think Viscera Seer would come right back in. And then an option for a Squirrel I think is kind of interesting and might be really fun for Chatterfang is Scurry of Squirrels. This is a 3-mana Squirrel with double Myriad. It says whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you can put a counter on target creature you control. Could potentially grow Chatterfang if we wanted to. But what I see specifically being interesting here is, so Scurry of Squirrels is going to attack an opponent, and it's going to make 2 copies of itself, right? Because it has 2 Myriad triggers, attacking every other opponent's. If this is a normal commander game, that means we have 4 more token copies of Scurry of Squirrels getting created, which is going to make 4 more 1/1 squirrels with Chatterfang. But they exile themselves at the end of combat, meaning we could still sacrifice them with Chatterfang's ability to get that minus, whatever we need out of it before they go away. I think that's what makes Scurry of Squirrels really interesting. The other fun part is knowing what we know about cards like Reconnaissance, where you can play around with abilities and when they resolve and how they do things. We could have these potentially still deal damage and sacrifice them as they in response to their trigger. You know, their trigger goes on the stack. We sacrifice the Chatterfang. We still get the +1/+1 counter, but then we get to use them for their ability. So I think there's just a ton of ways we could use this card specifically, which makes me really want to bring it back in. And I think it could be really interesting in a brew where you try to get a little bit more combative towards your opponent instead of just completely comboing, even though that can be very easy to do. Keeping a 3-lander with a Bastion Remembrance, Plumb the Forbidden, Nature's Lore, and a Court of Calling. Court of Calling is really important in this deck because it specifically can go get Pluto's Plunderer or another sack outlet or a Aristocrats payoff. You know the mana value of things like Pitiless Plunderer or Mirkwood Bats or things like that. So we know what we need to get X2 to go get them and get them onto the battlefield, which is what I like about Court of Calling a lot. But a 3-lander with Nature's Lore means, we're getting Chatterfang out on turn 3, but we're going to be a man ahead in the process. So turn 1, we draw Mirkwood Bats, which is great. Now we have the Remembrance and the Mirkwood Bats. Literally all we need now is the Pitiless Plunderer, and this is probably the dream scenario. We'll get that Swamp down so we can use that Tainted Wood. Turn 2, we get another Swamp. Perfect. We're just going to go ahead and Nature's Lore. I don't really see any reason not to get ourselves ahead of land and just be pushing even farther forward. I'll get the Mortuary here just to get this Surveil. There's kind of no reason not to. I guess we could go get another tap land. But we see a Squirrel Sanctuary. This is good because this gives us an option this next turn to play a land, play Chatterfang and that Squirrel Sanctuary if we want to. So turn 3, we're putting a land down here. And I think we can just as easily Chatterfang and play that Sanctuary. The Sanctuary comes in, makes us Squirrel. Didn't mean to do that. Which is going to make us another Squirrel because of Chatterfang's ability. Now we're up tokens. We have, Chatterfang kind of squared up, and now we can just move to our next turn. Natural Order is beautiful for 2 reasons. Well, mainly for one reason, and that's Craterhoof. We can sack a green creature to go get... Craterhoof is an option to end the game. I know that it's going to seem kind of distasteful to some people to play Chatterfang in a deck that's Aristocrats, but the truth is, if you go wide enough on Squirrels, sometimes you just need to end the game, and Natural Order is a great option to sack one of these Squirrels that are green and go get Chatterfang, and go get Craterhoof and probably just end the game straight outright. So we have 7 mana for the Convoke for Court of Calling. But here, I kind of like the idea of... I can't play Mirkwood Bats and Bastion, can I? Nope. I have no other good way of making tokens this turn. So I kind of like the idea of the Bastion. That's going to make us the human soldier, and the Squirrel. Feels weird there to not play the Mirkwood Bats immediately, but I think I would be okay to do it next turn as well. We'll kind of see what next turn looks like, but that's just 3 mana. So we do have 2 mana left. We could plumb if we wanted to draw a couple of extra cards, but it is instant speed, so I have no reason to make that decision now. If Chatterfang has any relevant attack with Forest Walk, I think I just take the attack, make it happen, and then pass here. What I can do is I leave up mana to use either Chatterfang's ability or Plumb the Forbidden if I really need to, which I think creates an interesting option for us. I think there probably is a world where you could consider Plumbing the Forbidden for just 1 or 2, but I also would rather just kind of see what my draw looks like, because if I could Court of Calling and get a plumb off, or Court of Calling and get something else down, I think it could persuade me to do something different. So I think that I would wait. Turn 5, we draw a Nurturing Peatland, so we're up to 6 mana. Because here's my thought. There's a world where we use 4 of these and 3 of our tokens to just Court of Calling out Pitiless Plunderer, right? That means we have 2 mana left, the exact mana we need to Plumb the Forbidden. I would sack 1, 2... I guess I have no reason to sack all 4, because I'm just going to get 4 more I'm going to get 4 more Squirrels, 4 treasures, right? And draw 4. I think that's what I would do. Draw 4, I'm going to make 4 treasures, and I'm going to make 4 Squirrels. 4 Bastion triggers go off, losing them a life and gaining me the life I just paid for the plum back. So we got that back. And now we're up 4 mana, which we could still use for Chatterfang here, or we could use this turn if we really want to. I don't know that we're there yet to want to use it. I kind of like the idea of getting something like Ashnod's Altar down, because then we can just literally print money, right? Sack a squirrel for a double colorless, and do that. So let's do that. Let's pay 3 treasures for Ashnod's. I think we might actually be able to have some fun here. So 3 of the treasures for Ashnod's Altar. We have enough. We technically have the aristocrats payoff, so we should be able to just call this, unless someone can stop us right now, this should be game. We sack a squirrel to the altar. It makes us another treasure and another squirrel. Everybody loses 1 and we gain 1. And we just have to do that, 34, 35 times right now? And, we win the game. Now, I'm going to doubt that on turn 5 no one has removal for Chatterfang or Pluto's Plunderer. But that's okay. I mean, if they do, we rebuild and do this again. But I mean, here you go. Here's a turn 5 potential combo win. Aristocrats win, just straight out as it is. We could use part of that double colored mana and some colored mana from that treasure to play Zulaport to speed it up. Play the Marionette Master to just speed this process up. Be chunking people out for 3 damage instead of 1. But I think this is where I would use the common sense. If I was sitting at a table, let's say I was sitting at a table with my friends, and this situation came up, I would look around the board. If no one had any mana open, I would just show the loop once, and I think we'd all be willing to see the loop and call the game. If people had mana open, I'd start doing this very carefully, and just to see if I need to, shift up my plan to make it work. But I think that's good for the first playtest. As far as getting to that point, I think you can kind of understand what our goal is. Let's go to playtest number 2. 4-lander with Nature's Lord, Pitiless Plunderer, and Nuka-Cola Vending Machine. So all we're missing, we have the Plunderer, we have a potential sack outlet. All we need is an Aristocrats payoff and a better sack outlet, and I think we're absolutely golden. So turn 1, we'll just get that Lockthwain in tapped. I mean, we're not doing anything right turn 1 anyway. Turn 2, we'll play that Forest. And again, all Nature's Lore. We drew 2 lands in a row, so I'd like to kind of, try to see if we can shuffle up the deck a little bit. Maybe get some of the lands out of the system, right? Now that the Surveil lands exist, I always like to try to go for them if I can. Just because after you shuffle your library, it at least gets you a look at 1 card, right? Off the top. And we can always, nuke it if need be. Am I missing the mortuary? There it is. So it comes in, we surveil when we see a Grave Pack. Grave Pack's great. I mean, that's another way to hurt our opponents in the process as we're sacrificing our things. Here, I'd just run Chatterfang out and call it a turn for now. I mean, I'd love to be able to do more than that, but I think I'm content with where we're at there. Here, we could get the Nuka-Cola down and start making the food. That way we can get that process started. So put 3 down for the Nuka-Cola, pay 1 into it to make a food and a squirrel. Leave a black mana up for, Chatterfang's ability if we need to do it. But otherwise, swing Chatterfang in somewhere if we can, because it has Forest Walk, and again, that is a relevant ability. Turn 5, we see the Nature's Lore. Okay. So Nuka-Cola Vending Machine says we can tap it to make a food, and then whenever we sack a food, we make a tap treasure. So when we sack that food, we're going to make a treasure and a squirrel. So, Marionette Master, a great Aristocrats payoff we have now, because it says whenever another creature or artifact is put in the graveyard from the battlefield, the opponent loses a life. So we have a potential start here for some good Aristocrat payoffs. I mean, Marionette would get me a better one this turn, right? I guess I could pay 4. My only thought was making another food and getting rid of a food on the same turn. Here's my thought. Pay 2 for the Marionette Master, or the Marionette Apprentice, I apologize. We're going to come in and fabricate 1. I mean, I guess I have no reason not to make the Servo, right? Just to get another squirrel. Then I'm going to pay the 2 life into the food, pay the 2 mana into the food to actually sacrifice it. This is going to go off, making that, we'll just put it over here, we'll put it down here because it's tapped, making me another squirrel, right? Now we had an artifact go to the graveyard, so each opponent's going to lose a life. And then I'll probably pay one into it, right, to make another food, to make another squirrel. And then we still got 2 mana, right? Because we did 2 for Marionette, 2 for that. Okay, right, that's right, 1 to make the food. I can't sack this turn because of it being tapped as far as using it for mana. 1 black left leaves us a perfect amount for Chatterfang. Slam in if we can, but otherwise we have 4 squirrels, which is a very risky number for a lot of things, right? Especially on turn 5 to get rid of some pesky things. Turn 6, man, 3 Tree City's a great draw there. 2 and a tap to make a mana of any color equal to the number of creatures of the chosen type we have. So squirrels, right? We're sitting at 5 right now. This treasure's now untapped, so we can use it. I think now it makes sense to play that Pitiless Plunderer, right? Because now, right, I think, again, only thing we're missing is a real sacrifice outlet. I say real because we have Chatterfang, but I wish we had a better way, because the problem right now, right, on turn 6 is I can't guarantee how many creatures are out. If all my opponents have 1 creature, I really can truly only do this loop of sacking a creature, getting a treasure, and another creature. I can only do that so many times, right, in the reality. So what I think I would probably do is, I guess I would just try to do it for as much as I can, right? Because we do have the Marionette, meaning even if we can only do it 3 or 4 times, we're still, right, hitting in for that 1 damage every time. So I would pay the 2 to sack the food to gain the life. That makes me a tapped treasure, another squirrel. That treasure is going to be tapped. And then I would just go ahead and pick a creature I can kill. Let's say it's an X2. I'll pay the last black I have, sack 2 squirrels to kill it. That makes me 2 more treasures, 2 more squirrels, right? And now these treasures are untapped, so I can use them right away. And now I'm just doing that loop, right? Killing every creature that's out. People are taking a life for every creature that dies with the Marionette. I'm making more treasures with the Plunderer. I'm actually realizing that the treasures, when I sacrifice them for mana, are going to be taking a life as well. Meaning that I don't see a world where we can't get 10, 12, 13 damage out this turn. 3 Tree City could always get us into something else if we wanted to. I'm just trying to think of if Natural Order can get us into any payoff that helps us win. I think this is a good place to stop as far as that goes. But let's just see. Would Natural Order be able to get us to anything in the deck that would account us for a win? Mazarek potentially, right? To just put counters on everything, get really big. I guess Peregrine Took gives us the foods. As we're making the tokens, we'd be getting foods, and the foods can help us draw through our deck and get things. So that's a potential option. Craterhoof doesn't give them all haste, it just gives them all trample. So I guess as long as we had enough of our original squirrels that we had last turn sitting around, right, there is always the Craterhoof option. I just basically start here to show you that the line can depend on what you see, but it's going to affect, what we want to do. So I think my answer would be Peregrine Took if I think I can get close by sweating it out. But if there's enough creatures, I think I would just go for Craterhoof at the end to have all of my original squirrels and Chatterfang and these guys just get massive. And I mean, at the point that they're all getting XX and Trample, where X is probably 20 by the time Craterhoof comes out, right? Or potentially up near that. They're already getting lower because all the life, the life they've lost this turn. And I mean, we probably get darn close to just... I imagine we do win the game on the spot. But let me know what you know, Chatterfang, down in the comments section below. Budget's a little bit higher on this one than I normally do for the channel, just because of what the commander is and the cost of some of the things to pay to play. But I try not to do this high budget on decks too often, but I thought it was only right to do Chatterfang and try my best to push a little bit forward. But let me know what you think, and I'll catch you guys next time.